Welcome back, chess enthusiasts. Today, we're diving into one of the most historic matches in chess history, the legendary World Championship clash between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky. This iconic encounter took place in 1972 in Reykjavik, Iceland, and has since become a symbol of the Cold War, where East met West on the 64 squares of the chessboard. New line. As we analyze this thrilling game, we'll not only explore the moves, but also uncover the strategies and psychological battles that unfolded between these two titans of chess. New line. Ready to revisit this monumental showdown? Let's jump right into the action.
1 pawn to c4. Fischer opens with the English opening, aiming to control the center while keeping his options flexible. Pawn to e6. Spassky responds with e6, setting up a solid foundation for his pieces and preparing to develop his bishop and knight. Knight to f3. Fischer develops his knight to f3, enhancing his control over the center squares, e5 and d4, and supporting the d4 advance. Pawn to d5. Spassky challenges the center directly with d5, taking space and asserting his presence. 3 pawn to d4. Fischer counters by playing d4, challenging Spassky's pawn and aiming to gain a stronghold in the center. Knight to f6. Spassky develops his knight to f6, reinforcing the central pawn and preparing for further piece development. 4 knight to c3. Fischer develops his knight to c3, further solidifying his control over the center and preparing to advance. Bishop to e7. Spassky supports his position by moving his bishop to e7, readying his king for castling. 5 bishop to g5. Fischer pins Spassky's knight on f6 to the queen, infusing tension into the position and threatening to disrupt Spassky's coordination. King to g8, castling. Spassky castles kingside, ensuring the safety of his king and connecting his rooks in preparation for the middle game. 6 pawn to e3. Fischer plays e3, strengthening his center and allowing for the development of his bishop on c1. Pawn to h6. Spassky questions the position of Fischer's bishop on g5, forcing it to make a decision. 7 bishop to h4. Fischer retreats his bishop to h4, keeping the pin on the knight and eyeing potential kingside strategies. Pawn to b6. Spassky plays b6, preparing to fianchetto his bishop on b7, which will enhance his control over the center. Fischer captures the pawn on d5, initiating exchanges in the center and opening lines for his pieces. Knight takes d5. Spassky recaptures with his knight. The game remains dynamic as both players contend for central control. 9 bishop takes e7. Fischer decides to exchange the bishop for Spassky's knight, forcing a recapture and slightly disrupting Spassky's pawn structure. Queen takes e7. Spassky recaptures with his queen, maintaining a strong presence in the center and ready to mobilize his pieces. 10. Knight takes d5. Fischer captures with his knight, asserting dominance in the center and forcing Spassky to reconsider. Pawn takes d5. Spassky captures back with the pawn, but the pawn structure is compromised, leading to potential weaknesses. 11. Rook to c1. Fischer places his rook on the open c-file, targeting the queen and controlling the center. Bishop to e6. Spassky develops his bishop to e6, completing his piece coordination and preparing for a defensive setup. 12. Queen to a4. Increasing pressure on Spassky's position. Pawn to c5. Spassky plays c5, countering Fischer's threats and reinforcing the knight while aiming to gain central space. 13. Queen to a3. Rook to c8. Spassky connects his rooks, reinforcing the knight on d5 and preparing for potential exchanges. 14. Bishop to b5. Fischer pins the knight on c6 to the rook on a8, creating tactical possibilities as the position opens up. Pawn to a6. Spassky pushes the pawn to a6, forcing Fischer's bishop to make a decision. 15. Fischer captures the pawn on c5, opening up lines and gaining a material advantage while further exploiting Spassky's pawn structure. Pawn takes b5. Spassky recaptures with the pawn, aiming to restore equilibrium and maintain central control. 16. Fischer castles kingside, ensuring the safety of his king and activating his rooks for future play. Rook to a7. Spassky brings his rook to a7 to prepare for an eventual rook lift, looking for active play on the a-file. 17. Bishop to e2. Fischer develops his bishop and prepares to connect his rooks, enhancing his position for a potential kingside initiative. Knight to d7. Spassky reroutes his knight to d7, aiming to reposition it for better mobility and support. 18. Knight to d4. Fischer centralizes his knight, controlling key squares and threatening to invade Spassky's position. Queen to f8. Spassky's queen shifts to f8, preparing for defensive maneuvering and reinforcing the position. 19. Fischer captures bishop, creating a strong pawn structure while continuing to exert pressure on Spassky's formation. Spassky recaptures with his pawn, maintaining a grip in the center while creating doubled pawns. 20. Pawn to e4. Fischer furthers his central control, preparing for an upcoming attack and establishing a strong foothold in the position. Pawn to d4. Spassky pushes his pawn to d4, trying to create counterplay and challenge Fischer's central authority. 21. Pawn to f4. Fischer continues to reinforce his grip on the position with f4, preparing for potential pawn breaks and restricting Spassky's pawn mobility. Queen to e7. Spassky centralizes his queen to e7, readying for defense while challenging Fischer's control in the center. 22. Pawn to e5. Fischer continues his aggressive strategy by pushing e5, forcing the issue and dictating the flow of the game. Rook to b8. Spassky aims to enhance his defensive setup by placing his rook on b8, preparing to support the potential advance of the b-pawn. 23. Bishop to c4. Fischer develops his bishop to c4, targeting the f7 square and applying pressure on the king side. King to h8. Spassky moves his king to h8, aiming for safety and getting out of potential tactical threats. 24. Queen to h3. Fischer shifts his queen to h3, threatening potential checkmating patterns and further intensifying the attack on Spassky's position. Knight to f8. Spassky brings his knight back to f8, trying to block the threats against his king and reorganizing his defenses. 25. Pawn to b3. Fischer solidifies his pawn structure with b3, preparing to open lines on the queen side and protecting his bishop on c4. Pawn to a5. Spassky seeks activity on the queen side by advancing a5, aiming to create counterplay and distract Fischer from his kingside attack. 26. Pawn to f5. Fischer pushes f5, creating strong threats against Spassky's position while attacking the knight on f8. Pawn takes e5. Spassky captures the advancing pawn, but this leads to more vulnerabilities in his structure. 27. Rook takes f5. Fischer captures back with his rook, gaining active pieces and continuing to mount pressure against Spassky's defenses. Knight to h7. Spassky moves his knight to h7, attempting to challenge the rook and regain some control over the situation. 28. Rook to cf1. Fischer doubles his rook on the f-file, gearing up for an intensified offensive against Spassky's kingside defenses. Spassky's queen relocates to d8, seeking an avenue for support and looking to counter Fischer's aggressive posture. 29. Queen to g3. Fischer plays qg3, pressing forward with threats against g7 and increasing the pressure on Spassky's position. Spassky moves his rook to e7, attempting to reinforce the defense but preparing for potential exchanges. 30. Pawn to h4. Fischer advances h4, increasing the tension on the king side and leaving Spassky to consider his precarious position. Rook to b7. Spassky moves his rook to b7, aiming to reinforce the defense and possibly prepare for counterplay. 31. Pawn to e6. Fischer pushes his pawn to e6, threatening to disrupt Spassky's pawn structure and create open lines against the black king. Rook to c7. Spassky shifts his rook to c7, focusing on the open c-file and preparing to support his other pieces. 32. Queen to e5. Fischer plays qe5, centralizing his queen and increasing threats against the black position, notably targeting the weak f7 square. Queen to e8. Spassky's queen adapts by moving to e8, defending the 7th rank and attempting to maintain central presence. 33. Pawn to a4. Fischer plays a4, solidifying his position and preparing to advance his pawn majority on the queen side. Spassky's queen shifts back to d8, looking to reposition and manage the threats against his defenses. 34. Rook to f2. Fischer repositions his rook to f2, preparing to double on the f-file and escalate pressure against the king side. Queen to e8. Spassky's queen adapts by moving to e8, defending the 7th rank and attempting to maintain central presence. 35. Rook to f3. Fischer doubles his rook to f3, enhancing his threats against Spassky's weakened king position. Spassky's queen relocates to d8, seeking an avenue for support and looking to counter Fischer's aggressive posture. 36. Bishop to d3. Fischer places his bishop on d3, supporting the f5 advance and maintaining attacking possibilities on the king side. Queen to e8. Showing the struggle to find optimal positioning amidst Fischer's onslaught. 37. Queen to e4. Fischer's queen centralizes on e4, maintaining pressure and linking up with the rooks for a potential combined attack. Knight to f6. Spassky's knight returns to f6, preparing to defend crucial squares and combat Fischer's threats. 38. Rook takes f6. Fischer decisively captures the knight on f6 with his rook, creating a significant material advantage. 38. Pawn takes f6. Spassky recaptures but is left in an unstable position. 39. Rook takes f6. Fischer goes for a knockout blow, with the rook on f6 threatening checkmate. King to g8. Spassky's king finds no safety. 40. Bishop to c4. Fischer's bishop moves into the attack, targeting the king. King to h8. Spassky's king is now surrounded and vulnerable. 41. Queen to f4. Fischer's queen delivers the final blow, a checkmate threat. With no escape available, Spassky resigns, marking a pivotal moment in the championship. And there you have it, the captivating journey through one of the most famous games in chess history. Bobby Fischer's brilliant tactics and strategies not only secured him the title of world champion but also left an indelible mark on the chess world. What were your thoughts on the match? Did any particular move stand out to you? I'd love to hear your insights and opinions in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more chess content, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, every game is a new adventure. Keep playing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.